It's Do Not Draft Day here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Welcome to the show. These are the guys that don't have a prayer. Okay, that's a bit of an overstatement. You guys know that everything that we do on this show is in moderation, but sometimes you got to come in hot to get people's attention. So, first of all, welcome to the pod. Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball is the show. I'm Dan Besbris, your host. You can find me on social at Dan Besbris. Today, we are talking about what, for search engine optimization reasons, is known as the do not draft list. But for those that have the ability to process nuance, is the guys that ain't getting near their pre-rank. So you can draft them later, but odds are they're not going to get later. So you won't have that opportunity, and thus they become players that we do not draft. Follow Old Man Squad on social. Twitter will follow you back eventually. I'm getting very slow at that, but I'm going to do it. I've got a tab open. I just have to have time to do it. Old Man Squad over on TikTok, although that one's broken right now because I'm posting videos and they're not showing up. And Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. That one is actually functional. Those feeds are going to just get the shorts that I put out. So that's a nice condensed way of collecting all of that good stuff. The purpose of today's show, as we're getting set to dive in now, is to let you guys know the players that I am down on. Basically, the players that we're fading, where they are currently ranked on the new Yahoo board, the third revision, which came out 2 days ago. Although, by the way, Yahoo is sneaky. In the middle of the night, they moved Brook Lopez back up 20 slots. So I guess they heard me yelling about it, and they were like, wait, we didn't mean to do that. In this video, we'll discuss guys that I believe are unlikely to get anywhere near their pre-rank on a per-game basis, but we're also going to get into the total side as well. So basically, what that means is, before we get to the actual players on the board, take someone like Domantas Sabonis as an interesting example. He's not on today's show, but Sabonis last year was number 30 per game, which is obviously nowhere near where he's getting drafted. 16, 17, somewhere in that range this year. But dude played in all 82 games, so by totals, he was actually number 12, meaning there was this narrow window. It wasn't a big one. It was a small window opening, but he plowed right through it. And the window for Sabonis was, can he literally play in every single ball game? Because if so, he beats his ADP. There are some guys that need to play in every single ball game just to get near their ADP. Those guys will probably be on the do not draft board today, because what you're looking for on draft night are guys that can beat their pre-rank sometimes easily, not guys where every single thing has to break right for them to get there. And a lot of times we find ourselves, me, you, others, the general population, drafting guys at their ceiling. And that's what we really want to avoid, and that's one of the main purposes of today's show. I am also, as a preface, excluding some of the obvious punt build guys. So Giannis Antetokounmpo is not going to appear on today's show, even though he basically has zero chance of, in 9 category leagues, being in the top 8. He has no chance because his free throws are so bad that they're going to weigh him down. But who cares? Because if you're drafting Giannis at 6, you're likely punting free throws. And in a punt free throw build, he's probably going to end up around number 6 in 9 category, or I guess that would be 8 out of 9 categories. But you're generally punting that thing anyway, so doesn't matter. The first name on today's board is Anthony Edwards at number 10. And before I tell you why I don't like Anthony Edwards at number 10, I got to tell you why we're so grateful to have a partner like Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on their $200,000 mega contest by picking 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game is over, BetOnline has an online casino. You can get in on some blackjack, some poker, unwind with over 150 slot games, you name it. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Anthony Edwards on the latest Yahoo board readjustment moved back up again. He managed to get off of my list because actually the last time we did one of these do not draft boards, it was like maybe 3-ish weeks ago, I think. Edwards was down at 16. And I know what you're thinking. Dan, 16 and 10 are not that far apart. But in actuality, they couldn't be any farther apart. One is a mid-second rounder. The other is a first. One is the guy you are building your entire team around, the critical linchpin of your fantasy club, where whatever they're good at is the thing that you have the best shot of winning. And the other is the guy you're pairing with the dude who is the building block of your team. So when Anthony Edwards had a pre-rank of 16, I didn't put him on the board. He probably could have still been a possible bust at 16, but I felt like it was close enough that I was like, you know what? That's just being mean. But at 10, I don't think there's a shot. Let's walk through a little bit of why. So last year, on a per-game basis, Anthony Edwards was number 37 in 9-cat. 37. That's the first pick of the 4th round, not the pre-penultimate pick of the 1st round. I learned that like a month ago, and I'm excited that I finally got to use it. The ultimate, the penultimate, and the pre-penultimate. That's the last, second to last, and third to last. Welcome to the nerdery that is my brain. In 8-cat last year, Anthony Edwards was number 28. So he was an earlier 3rd rounder instead of the first pick of the 4th, but it was still distant from number 10. However, by totals last year, he was number 12 in 8-cat. Totals in 9-cat, he was number 20 because he played in 79 out of 82 basketball games. 79 being over at 95% of his team's games. That's an extraordinarily high number when the league average last year was around 71. But all that said, basically, what we just informed you of on the show is that Anthony Edwards last season, so let's not talk about what we think is going to happen this year yet. Last season, Anthony Edwards needed to play in 81, most likely, out of 82 games to get to, actually, about 81 out of 82 games to get to where he's being drafted right now by totals. And I get it. Durability is the 10th category. I've talked about that on podcasts for years. There are certain guys where you look at them and you're like, this guy probably is going to stand up to the rigors of an NBA season. It's not a coincidence that the extraordinarily stout, not chunky, like stout, just built, strong dudes seem to be able to weather the long NBA season than the guys that are not. Nikola Jokic is extraordinarily durable. Domantas Sabonis, extraordinarily durable. Anthony Edwards, it appears at least, extraordinarily durable. But anything can happen during an NBA season. Just because a guy like Anthony Edwards is not a guy who, is going to have like a sore torso as often as someone who's less bulky and strong than him, doesn't mean that stuff just can't happen. Anthony Edwards is just as likely to turn an ankle as almost anybody else in the NBA. He might heal faster from it, but dude is flying through the air at unbelievable heights. Like, there are a lot of really clown-sized shoes down on the ground that he could land on. These NBA players have extraordinarily large feet. I don't know how we don't have more sprained ankles when you think about it. Somebody goes up for a rebound, they come down, and there's just like their feet are like the size of my arm, and they're everywhere. How did they not land on each other more often? Whatever. So all these ways that it could go wrong. One sprained ankle, one sore knee, one hyperextension, one bad shoulder stinger. Like, there's so many things that could happen that keep an NBA player from getting into all 82 basketball games. Some of the arguments I've heard on social media and on YouTube, and by the way, I should mention, please hit like on the video. Even if you dislike it, it's helpful. Even if you feel that I'm filling you with rage, comment, whatever, like all this stuff is extremely helpful. Subscribe, however you're taking in the content, and drop that 5-star review. Some of the arguments I've heard on social, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, is that his steals and his field goal and free throw percent are all going to go up. I vehemently disagree with the steals number. Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say vehemently. I believe that what you're seeing is kind of a leveling. The steals could be higher, and they were. The previous year, he was at 1.6, and he was down at 1.3 this year, so the defensive stats were a little bit lower. They could be a little bit higher, but I vehemently disagree with the notion that they will be higher. And if they are, we're probably talking about a 10th. It probably goes from 1.3 to 1.4. His minutes came down from 36 to 35 this past year, and I think they'd probably rather keep his minutes near 35 instead of 36. But in any event, okay, maybe let's for argument's sake say that the steals do go back up to 1.4 or even 1.5. The percentages were, particularly free throw, far and away the best they'd ever been this last year. So it's pretty weird for me to hear the argument, oh yeah, free throw is going to keep going up. He's not that great of a shooter, friends. He is an incredible basketball player, and he's still getting better, unquestionably. But his free throw went up from 76 to 84% over the past year. He was at 79 the year before that. It dipped, then it came back up again. Career high by a lot, by 5 full percentage points this last year, on the highest volume he'd ever had. So to assume that that keeps going higher, I think is faulty logic. And field goal percent, by the way, also a career high this past year. Not by much. He was basically at the same as the year before, but a couple thousandths of a point better. Not nothing. His three-point shooting percentage has been almost exactly the same for 3 years in a row. 36, 37, 36%. I don't expect that to be a massive change. His two-point percent, 52, 51.5, 2 times in a row, has been largely unchanged also. We did this weird anointing for Anthony Edwards, but by all accounts, not much changed for him year over year. Scoring went up by about 1.5 points because he got to the foul line more, because his usage was higher. His assists went from 4.4 to 5.1. His shots went up by 0.2 of a field goal, and his free throw went up by 1. So the ball was in his hands a little bit more, and it resulted in 0.7 of an assist and an extra free throw. He actually took slightly fewer three-pointers this last year. I don't know if that's something that continues. My guess is actually it probably goes the other way because the spacing on that team just got worse. The starting power forward is a worse three-point shooter than the one they traded out. And if you're thinking there's like more usage to give to Anthony Edwards, I don't know where that comes from. He took 20 shots a game last year and 6.5 free throws and 5 assists. We saw in the Olympics, he's not that great of a point guard. So I just don't see how there's enough room for him to go forward to get to this rank without basically guaranteeing me, and no one can guarantee me this, that Anthony Edwards plays in like 92% of his team's games or more. So is there a chance he gets to number 10 by totals in 9-cat? 0. Is there a chance he gets number 10 in 8-cat by totals? Yes. But it's that really narrow needle thread that's going to require him to play in about 80 games. It's possible. He basically did it last year. But banking on that is a recipe for massive disaster. Take a guy at 10 that only needs to play in like 72 games to get to their pre-rank by totals. Don't take the guy that needs to play every single game because in the NBA, it's just extraordinarily rare. And he might be the rare guy, but I'd rather not bet on that. Next name on the list is a repeat from our last edition of this one. It's Paolo Banchero. I thought for sure at some point he would go down in the pre-ranks, but I guess because enough people play points leagues, it's just not happening. And we'll keep this explanation somewhat brief. Paolo Banchero is another guy where you're like, okay, I don't know how much more they're going to not let him, but like how much more is there to do on that team? He took 18 shots and 7 free throws a game with 5.5 assists. That's a ton of usage already for a team that, I don't want to say like brought guys in, But, guys around him are getting better. Jalen Suggs is going to be expected to do more. Franz Wagner is probably going to be expected to do the same or a little bit more. They brought in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to do something, presumably. So I don't know that there's more for Banchero to do, meaning last year he was number 159 in 9-cat on a per-game basis. If you punted turnovers, which was the single largest change you could make to him because the guys down in that range are typically lower turnovers, he gets to number 98 in 9-cat. If you punt free throw, his second worst category, he gets number 57 in 9-cat. We still ain't at 39. And if you punt field goal, then finally he gets to number 42, which is basically where he's being drafted. So you needed a triple punt to get him there per game last season. Yes, by totals, he was better than that. He's another example, like Anthony Edwards, of a guy who played in 80 games. If you were punting all three of his bad categories, by totals, he was number 21. But let's start turning these punts back off again. If you were punting just free throw and turnover, which are the ones that had the biggest jump, by totals, he was number 26. If you were punting just turnovers, by totals, he was number 61. I will not, hear me clearly here, I will not draft a player who needs to be punting 2 categories and have perfect health to get to their fantasy rank. That is a brutal strategy in fantasy. And again, there's like a 1 to 5% chance that it happens. Like, again, it happened last year. If you punted 2 things and he was super healthy, he beat this pre-rank. But how many of us really want to count on that? Maybe the free throw gets better. I don't know. Like, there hasn't been any strong sign of that happening yet. It could still happen, but there hasn't been a super strong sign of it. Could the shooting get better? I don't know. Maybe. Like, incremental jumps for this dude are not going to be enough. Because, again, we needed 2 punts and perfect health. Even if you wipe out one of those, let's say he fixes his field goal percent and you only need 1 punt and perfect health, it's asking too much. That's what we just talked about it with Anthony Edwards, but Paolo's situation is tougher because Anthony Edwards right now, he needs 1 punt and perfect health to get anywhere near his pre-rank. Paolo last year needed 2 punts and perfect health. So now you're banking on 1 punt, perfect health, and significant fantasy game growth. Way too many hoops to jump through. You thought the needle was tough to thread on Anthony Edwards. The needle for Paolo is even more narrow. No. Let's take a quick commercial break before we get to our next name on the board. Another retread, and sorry, it's another Orlando Magic, is Franz Wagner. And here's the thing. You're going to listen to or watch this show and think I don't like the Magic. I actually really like Orlando. I love how gritty they are on defense. I love the fact that their team MO is basically disruption, but that doesn't lend itself to great fantasy value. And I don't fully understand the Franz Wagner thing because he had this big usage bump and he was still number 70 last year. What do we think is about to happen? If he magically fixes his free throw or his 3-point stroke, then I guess the field goal percent could come up a little bit. So a little bit more from 3-point line, a little bit more field goal, maybe, but like 70 to 44 is actually a pretty good sized jump. It can be done, and his fantasy game isn't bad. Like, it's a weird, there's a cognitive disconnect happening here. Franz Wagner's fantasy game is fine. I have no problem with it. I just don't understand why he's being drafted at 44 when there are other guys being drafted at 44 that have like track record of per game production near 44. Like freaking Desmond Bane is going around there. He was number 33 last year, and he's a 30s, 40s guy even when that team was healthy. I'm not targeting Desmond Bane, but if you're presenting me with Bane or Franz Wagner, I'm going to go Bane 100 times out of 100. Their percentages were not that far apart, those oddly enough, but Bane gets far more 3-pointers. That's like the big gap between those two dudes. Do I want Franz, or do I want Franz with like another 1.5 3-pointers? I don't even care if Bane's going to do less this year. And he's going to do less, but maybe you get the efficiency back. I just don't understand this one. And I keep looking at it like, what am I missing? Do people think he's going to get another like 2 shots a game? I just don't think those are there. I like Franz Wagner. I like his fantasy game. But I like him as a 60s range draft pick, not 40s. This one boggles the mind. I can't explain it. With the other guys, it's like, okay, well, Anthony Edwards is like face of the league, and Paolo, young potential face of the league, good points league option. There are these reasons I can dig up, I can unearth with a trowel. With Wagner, I don't understand. I don't know what people are hoping for. Anyway, let's keep going. Brandon Miller. You guys know I never draft these young guys. I was skeptical of Brandon Miller at his last rank position, which was 66. And I was lightly skeptical of him at 70, where he opened. At 59, I'm a hard no. Because Miller is another guy where you need a bunch of fantasy tweaks to get him where he needs to be. Again, you can make certain arguments like, okay, what if you're punting field goal percent? All right, like, yeah, that makes him better. Cool. Down the stretch last year, if you were, I think he was number 68 the second half of last season when LaMelo was down and he was sort of a one-man wrecking, or it was he and Miles Bridges. Each of those guys was getting like 16 to 20 shots a ball game. And Miller was number 68 on 20 points, 3 threes, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 1.7 defensive stats. There was just a lot that was heaped on his plate. It kind of feels like that should be the target for this year. Hey, can Brandon Miller keep doing what he did the second half of last season if LaMelo's back? And then, of course, if you adjust the timeline on Miller, things get a little bit wonky. Because if you look at just the last 2 months, he fell down the board 40 slots because his field goal and free throw percent both slipped. And I don't know that either one of those is a great representation because, sample size type of stuff. But, like, is Brandon Miller a 45% field goal guy, or is he 42? Is he an 85% free throw guy, or is he 81? These things actually matter when you're trying to get a guy inside the top 60. So for me, I just don't think he's going to get as many shots this year as he got the second half of last season. I know that he's one of the building blocks for the Hornets, so it's not like they're going to cut him down to doing next to nothing. But LaMelo's going to do a bunch of stuff. That's just how it works. And then Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller. When you go from being the number 2 to the number 3, you take a little hit. And if a best case scenario for him was the number 2 option and top 70, I don't want to draft him in the top 60. I'm not even worried about how many games he's going to play, because by totals, he could very well blow past this number. But like for guys that are going in the 5th round and beyond, I'm actually not that overly concerned with how many games they're going to play. There's this. So Miller's probably going to be good enough where you obviously want him to be better. But like as you get back into that 90, 100, 110 range, health is not a priority. I don't want a 110 range guy who's healthy. I would rather have a 55 range guy who is a little bit dinged up, and I'll fill in the gaps. If he goes on the IL or whatever, I'll pick up somebody who is going to be, 120 range. I call that like the 10th category, the durability thing, is really only relevant through about the first 6 rounds. After you get past that, you can do better just taking a shot. Maybe 7 rounds. It's gray. It's a gray area. But like the first few rounds, yes, you want a guy that's not going to be extraordinarily banged up unless the upside is so overwhelming. Like if you were able to get Joel Embiid at 11 or 12, that's just overwhelming upside. But Embiid is now ranked 5th on the current Yahoo board. And if that does steer people to take him at 5, I don't think I'm taking that shot. Anthony Edwards, again, being the other one where you're like, okay, yeah, you get the potential durability, but you're taking a guy in the first round who per game was ranked almost 2.5 rounds later than that last year. But once you get to pick 75, pick 85, whatever, like if a guy's sometimes banged up, I don't care because I'm looking for guys that have a per game jumping potential. And with Brandon Miller, maybe he ends up healthy. He's young. Young guys tend to survive the season because their limbs are not broken down yet. Although, we don't know if little things are going to happen to him. Hard to know. But I don't care. I don't care. Because whoever I'm drafting in the 5th round, I don't want to draft a guy in the 5th round where I feel like the 6th round is where they belong. And for Miller, it might even be later than that. Next name on the list is a retread. This is Jusuf Nurkic at 72. I'm afraid of Nurk. He was 112 last year. And he should probably be listed as a punt free throw guy. He's not generally listed as it, but his free throw number is weird. Remember in the bubble, he shot like 90% at the foul line. So I guess there's a chance that comes back a little bit, and that gets Nurk closer to this mark, and that's where I would be wrong. So I'm willing to admit that, like, if the free throw number gets back into the 70s, then he's a perfectly fine pick at 72. I just don't see almost any way that he gets beyond 72. To me, this is a 0 upside play. And I get it. The centers start to dry up in this range. And so at some point, you're just going to have to take a center, even if there's not one that you like a ton. But with the Suns getting deeper in multiple respects, they got more players that are good, regardless of position on the floor. And they got a better backup center behind Nurkic. So, if anything, last year was probably a best-case scenario. He stayed healthy. He played 76 out of 82 games, which, maybe it happens again, but I'm not going to bank on Nurk being super healthy 2 years in a row. He was involved, like 27-plus minutes a ball game is what his body could handle. I don't think that number's going up. So, again, with Nurk, I feel like we saw the good season. Last year was the good season for him. And in 9-cat, he was outside the top 100. Again, largely because of the free throw issue. But even if he sorts out the free throw thing, it's not like it's going to go up to 80. We're hoping it gets to like 70. So even then, you still probably need to punt free throw or just like be really, really, really good at free throw to absorb it. And so for my money, I'd just rather go a different way. Because again, we need a couple of things to work to get him to this pre-rank. And I'd rather not bank on things having to work to get there. I'm looking for guys where we don't need anything to fit to get to that point. And I got to put him back on here again because at this point I have like 2.5 years of rage. Khris Middleton back on the board. Per game, he almost definitely beats this mark, by the way, because his pre-rank now is 91. Yahoo moved him back down the board a little bit. Remember, he opened outside the top 100, and I thought, okay, this like I could maybe. Well, hold on a minute. Let's dive in on the Middleton thing. He opened at 150, and that was like, yeah, okay, this is an easy spot to take a shot. Then he jumped all the way to 83, and I thought, nope, not a chance. Not going to sit on this mess all year. And now he's back down to 91, which is closer. But there's almost no chance I'm taking Middleton inside the top 100. So this one's a hard no for me, even though if he gets healthy, he will beat this per game. But he's not healthy. They're bringing him along slowly after multiple. I think it was both ankles, both feet. I forget. It's both bottom of his body. I forget if it's ankle or foot. I think it was both ankles. Cleanups, whatever they wanted to say that they were doing with him. This is a guy that just hasn't been healthy in 2 years. So, like, any little thing with him is a big siren going off. It's not little stuff on a guy who was fine. Okay, great. He'll get back to being fine again. It's little stuff on a guy that they already couldn't play for a full ball game without him feeling awful. They tried in the playoffs, and then it was like, all right, we got to get these cleaned up because he's playing through all sorts of pain. Khris Middleton's a dude that's just in pain constantly right now, and I'm sure it sucks. I feel bad for the dude. but I'm not putting him on my fantasy team because there's going to be frequent rest days where if you're in a public league that doesn't have IL plus, you're going to wear a 0 in that spot. Okay, IL plus, like you can throw him in that slot, but odds are you have someone else on your team that probably also needs that IL plus slot. So you need 2, 3 of those in your league. How many of these are we working with? And how much are people going to be able to game the system when a guy like Middleton is actually going to sit out the ball game? I can't, like, games cap Roto, I'll take him outside of 100 because then at least I can squat on him when things are going poorly. And like when they get him up to 28 minutes a ball game, I'll drop him into my lineup. And I know you guys think, oh, Daniel, all you talk about is games cap Roto. This is quite the opposite. I want absolutely positively 0 to do with Khris Middleton in any head-to-head league that I'm in. He's going to be a massive headache this year. You are going to absorb a ton of zeros. It's not worth it, even if the per-game stuff is better, because it's not going to be like 1 4-week absence where you put him in the IL and you're fine. It's going to be, oh, he's playing this day, he's not playing this day, he's not feeling great, so let's yank him after 15 minutes. Let's make sure that he's fine for the next ball game. Headache after headache after headache. No. Roto, with a games cap, or even head-to-head, I guess, with the not so much head-to-head with the games cap, but more so Roto with a games cap. Okay, I could get on board with this one. Draft him in the late 8th round and don't start him on opening day and wait until his minutes are in the high 20s, and then maybe you get a guy that's like a top 60 per game dude who's going to miss a bunch of stuff, but you're hunting for those big per game jumps in games capped league, and that's the kind of thing that you might get out of him. But that's not what we're talking about right now. He has the potential to be a huge annoyance. I don't even care if he beats 91 by totals. I don't even care if at the end of the year we go back and we're like, yeah, like he beat this mark by totals. He beat this mark per game. It's going to be extraordinarily obnoxious on how we get there. He's going to miss critical games during your head-to-head playoffs. He's going to miss critical games during your season. Yes, the numbers might at the end say this ended up being worth it, but I am not touching him in head-to-head inside the top 100. I want guys I can count on there that have a much bigger chance of upside. I'm annoyed. My Khris Middleton rage is through the roof. And a quick recap here with a couple of honorable mentions. Remember, Anthony Edwards at 10, Paolo Banchero at 39, Franz Wagner at 44, Brandon Miller at 59, Jusuf Nurkic at 72, Khris Middleton at 91. And the honorable mentions are Miles Bridges at 54 and Julius Randle at 65 for 2 very different reasons, by the way. Miles Bridges, because even in what I would deem basically a best-case scenario last year, which was LaMelo Ball played a week and a half and then he was done for the season, Miles Bridges had all the usage he could handle last year. Literally everything went through him for half the season. He took almost 18 shots a game, and he was number 57. Why would I take him at 54 if a perfect scenario last year of him getting to do everything put him at number 57? Seriously, why would I do that? That seems harebrained. Is he going to be a flop? No. Odds are he's not going to totally flop because, like, his fantasy game is pretty translatable. But I'm not expecting him to... I mean, the way that he beats this is if he shoots 50% from the field, which, like, he did get off to a hot start this season. I guess credit to Miles Bridges this last year. His steals and his field goal percent were massive when LaMelo Ball was around. And so that's the trade-off. I'm not willing to take that shot. The shot being, okay, LaMelo's back. Miles Bridges' shot selection is going to get so much better that he beats this. He could, by the way. That's why he's an honorable mention. That's why he's not one of the do not draft guys. In my opinion, there are, I would say, just as many ways that this could go wrong as well. But if you think, and like, again, I don't want to put this completely off the table. And I want to stress, again, this is why he wasn't on the do not draft board. This is why he was an honorable mention. I just don't like the idea that, you know, counting on the efficiency to get back where it was at the start of this season and basically the previous, not after he was suspended for a year, but the year before that, he shot 49%. I don't want to count on that. He's 47% for his career. Is LaMelo Ball going to get him open all the time? It's conceivable. And if he shoots 50%, then he probably does beat this mark. But again, that feels like a coin flip to me. So coin flip, I took him off the board. And Julius Randle at 65 is another one, in my opinion, where you need to be punting turnovers for one to get him there. And he's coming back from a big injury. He's in a new situation. This is not me, by the way, saying that it can't happen. Julius Randle could get there. If you were playing 8-cat last year, this is basically where he finished before he got hurt. And he might do it again. But I call it a coin flip. So coin flips, I'm just kind of shying away from, and that to me is what Miles Bridges is. Randle's more of a coin flip of like heads, he gets to do the same amount in Minnesota that he did in New York. Tails, he does a little bit less. And with Bridges, the coin flip is heads, his efficiency goes back up with a healthy, we hope, LaMelo, and tails is it doesn't. The evidence suggests that the efficiency should get better for Bridges, so maybe it's slightly better than a coin flip, but I'm not willing to take the risk. And if you are, I'm okay with that. Like, again, 50-50 is not that bad. The main guys, the main 6 dudes that we talked about today, in my opinion, are much, much worse than a coin flip. And so, again, I don't want to overemphasize these last 2 names. They're just guys that are more coin flippy for me. And so, personally, I'm probably staying away from that direction. Thanks for watching, everybody. This was the, it's called Do Not Draft, but these are the guys that Dan-O doesn't really want on his fantasy team this year. This is Yahoo's Revision 3 board edition of the show. Please remember, again, to hit that like button on YouTube on your way out. Subscribe, however you're taking in the show. And big thank you, by the way. I've seen we got a few new 5 stars on Apple. We get a couple new 5 stars on Spotify pretty much every single day because they made that one really easy to do. So if you have an opportunity to do that stuff, I really would appreciate it. Find me on social at Dan Bespris. There is going to be a lot going on social media this year. Those of you that have followed me for seasons, you know how it's going to be. And I'm doing more this year, if you can believe that. I've made a pact with myself to do max stuff for one full calendar season. Calendar year, I should say. Old Man Squad, by the way, is the feed to get my stuff and all of the amazing hosts at our website, including some of the new ones we just brought over from Fantasy Basketball International. Adam King and Noah Rubin also now hosts here with Old Man Squad. Old Man Squad over on Instagram, Old Man Squad Fantasy, I should say, on Instagram. And if I can ever figure out how the hell to get TikTok to work again, Old Man Squad over there as well. Have a wonderful middle of your Friday. We're talking to Dan Titus this afternoon of Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Fantasy. He can tell us a little bit about this latest Yahoo rank board and also his team in one of our drafts. I'm Dan for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. See you a little bit later on today.